Still connecting.
Okay.
This is why.
I presume it gives you like a notification when it says you're actually live. Hang on, let me see. Oh yeah, I've got my Wi-Fi on. Let's see.
I usually do like a. Oh, there we
Okay,
go.
we're in live. You're in?
Yeah.
Okay.
In.
Okay, Jo, hello.
Hello, Annie.
Hello, everybody joining. Oh wow, people are joining. Wow, this is such a buzz. This is my first live. Look at you all. Welcome. Okay, so let's chat a little bit at the top and talk through what's going to happen in this hour, and then we'll get into it, Jo.
Yeah.
So for everyone joining, welcome. This is the first live Substack I've done. Jo, you've done a few before, right?
Yeah.
But this is the first live Substack I've done, and it is all within the theme of Movement Month on my page Changes, where I'm dedicating the whole month to just the way we move our bodies. And there's loads of questions around that, obviously endless questions. And I am quite ignorant about so much of body movement. I have my own ways of doing it, which I'll tell you, Jo. But I thought I would speak to some experts, and Jo, you are my first expert. So thank you so much for coming on.
You are so. It's absolutely delightful to be here. I'm so happy. I think this is going to be such a lovely conversation. I can't believe I'm getting to talk to Annie Mac about things. It's great.
Good. Well, it's definitely the first interview I've ever done about yoga. So let me start this by confessing that I am really ignorant about yoga, and I have the way I exercise is quite extreme. And
Yeah.
I loved the title of your page, Yoga for Tired People, because I thought there's something very considerate and thoughtful in that. And you've obviously learned from your teachings that a lot of people are tired. But for me, my problem is tired, but it's also lack of time.
Yeah.
So I feel like when I have a half an hour block in the day, it's so precious that I just need to kill myself with exercise. I need to like burn as many calories as possible. I need to be sweating. I need to be shaking. I need to be it's so to me, I haven't expended enough energy unless I'm feel nearly sick at the end of it, So yoga is obviously the opposite of that. And I've never really gravitated towards there. And I've done it in bits. And whenever I have done it, and I've never done it for more than kind of 20 minutes, I do understand, I can feel the edges of what it does for me, but I've never got into it enough or understood it enough to really understand. And it's something I really want to do. Because I think it involves patience, and I am the most impatient person ever. So I guess we can start with, you could maybe tell me about your story with yoga and how you got there in your life and what it did for you when you discovered it.
So I am really resonating with what you're saying, Annie, because I am just not a naturally calm. I'm not naturally patient. I'm not a naturally Zen person at all. And I kind of got into yoga by accident. So I was a real party animal in early, early 2000s. And I went to drama school in Glasgow. And as part of the course, they basically made you do yoga. So they were like, you have to do yoga because they were like, a career in the arts is going to end you if you don't have some kind of way to process the stuff that's happening. And they were really ahead of the time, and they made us do an hour of Iyengar yoga every single day. And
Wow.
I hated it.
You hated it?
I hated it. I hated it. I hated it so much. I felt like I remember the first time that the teacher said, right, we're going to lie still for 10 minutes. And it felt like, do you know that moment when the plane doors close and you think, oh, I'm stuck. I'm here. And I just wanted to run screaming from the room. I just couldn't be with myself for any time.
Wow.
And I just found it very, very difficult. And then at that time it was the first time I was away from home. It was I was away from my family, and I had a bereavement, and I knew I needed something. I needed something that was going to ground us. and I joined a local gym, and they had a class called Body Balance
Body
on,
balance.
and
Okay.
it was this mixture of like Tai Chi, yoga, Pilates, and the teacher was this like very Glaswegian woman, and she used to play Brian Adams in the Shavasana, and she'd say, "And if you need to, you can just leave when the lying down bit comes." And it met me where I was at that time,
Yeah.
and I was able to, from that, I was able to like, okay, I kind of came back into my body, and then through the 4 years, so that was quite
Yeah.
early on. And then by the end of those 4 years, I was just completely in love with the slower practices of yoga. So it took me 4 years of doing yoga every day before I was like, okay, I get this.
And you were doing that whilst in drama college,
Yeah,
whilst a teenager, early 20s, that kind of period of your life. I mean,
yeah.
the dedication to be doing yoga every day as a student is
Well, they
remarkable.
made you. They made
Oh,
they
you had
made
to
you
do it.
do it. They made
So
you
it
do
was an
it.
hour a day.
So it wasn't an hour every single day. It was an hour. I think we had it 3 times a week, and
Yeah.
then but they were like, you have to do. They were
At
like,
home.
you do it. Uh,
God.
It was brilliant, and it was such like our first day in Freshers Week. Um, Bear in mind, like I'm from a very working class background. I was really into the rave scene at the time. Like this was not a world that I was involved in at all. On our first day in Freshers Week, David Lynch came to the school and gave us a talk on transcendental meditation and told us that we all had to do transcendental. And
What a treat. Wow.
I was like, mind just, and it
Yeah.
was like a David Lynch film. I was like, "What is going on?
Yeah.
What?" And from that, I was like, There's something that like really interesting in this." And so by the time I graduated, I was like, I don't want a career in the arts.
Mm.
It's just not what I want." But I really am in love with yoga. I was like, the transformation that I went on in those 4 years of being able to come back to my body. And I still struggle with it. I struggle with meditation, and I struggle with, but my life is so much harder when I don't do it.
So tell me about this transformation then, the change between
Mhm,
you before and after the yoga. You talked about going through, bereavement. You're a student. I presume you're around booze.
mm.
You're going out. How did it change you or change your experience of that very intense period of your life, having that yoga in your day?
Feel now, this is going to sound really strange, but I feel now like I am. Whereas before, I felt like my life kind of controlled me. I felt kind of out of control, and like I was being pulled,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I was reacting to everything. So like I was so reactive, and now I feel like what yoga gives me is the ability to respond. So now things still happen, but I'm able to like take that beat before
yeah.
I like react to something, and that's been complete life changing on every level.
Yeah, yeah. So you talked about David Lynch and the meditation. Like, I guess I'm so ignorant about yoga and what it is. Obviously, I know it originates from India, but uh, uh, further than reading Eat, Pray, Love when she goes to
Yes.
the yogi, like I am so clueless with regards to it. Can you give us a little potted history? And I know this is hard because it's vast of like what the origins of yoga. I suppose where did it come from and um what it like if I was an alien come down from
Mhm.
Mars and you were trying to explain it to me, what is it?
So that's a really, it should be quite an easy question to answer, but it's not, because it's such a
Right.
broad thing, and such a deep thing as well. So it's not just broad, it's also like a long history as well. But I think a lot of people think that yoga is this physical exercise. So if you were playing a game of charades and you had yoga, you would like do physical
Yeah, yeah.
exercise to explain what it is. But yoga's a philosophy um, and a structure in which to live your life in order to, like,
Mm.
yoga means union.
Mm.
And
I
what you're
never knew
trying,
that.
so it means union, and it means the word yoga means to yoke. So where the and it's not yolk as in an egg, it's a yoke as in like the thing that keeps the horse to the cart.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Wow.
like, the union, and it depends who you ask whether that union is with breath and body, whether that union's with you and the universe, whether that union's with you and the rest of humanity. Um, but people think of it as a physical exercise, but actually, yoga, you could practice yoga and not do any physical exercise whatsoever. It's a path to um, well, traditionally, it's a path to enlightenment. So it's a path that you take in order to lessen suffering in your life and others. And it's like a structure, and there's different paths to it as well. So you
Yeah.
the physical posture is one path, but there's like karma yoga and there's bhakti yoga. There's different types of yoga that you could do and never do a physical posture ever.
Wow. And so what yoga do you specialize in, if there is one?
So I specialize in hatha yoga, which is the
Okay.
physical postures.
Okay. And what can you tell us about that? Like in terms of the physical postures,
Mhm.
um, where did they originate from? And is there a history behind, I mean, not each one individually, but just that concept of yoga?
Yeah, so it started in like the early 19th century, and then we've had different teachers over the years kind of creating different sequences. And the yoga that I teach is actually a much more restorative style of yoga, but the postures themselves come from Patati Joyce's Ashtanga, um, the
Yeah.
physical postures. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So in preparation for this, Joe,
Yes.
I took your 10-minute shoulder
Oh,
stretch
did you?
session, and it was a joke. Not you, me, because I was sat on the sofa and I was like, should I be sitting on the ground here? Should I? And I tried to like sit cross-legged and upright on the sofa.
Mm,
And I couldn't, basically, I can't even sit with my legs crossed and keep
mhm,
my back straight for 10 minutes. This is what I realized. So the way you sat, it just looked so effortless. The way that your body was able to hold itself upright from when you were sat cross-legged on the ground. I just couldn't do that. It was such a strain to do that. And it was so eye-opening for me because I consider myself fit and strong. I do so much exercise, all very high intensity.
mm.
Get me on a Peloton or on the football pitch, but I couldn't even hold my bloody back up for 10 minutes. Um, so it made me realize that I have so much work to do, and I don't know whether that's my core or my spine or what, but I was huffing and puffing. I was so graceless trying to do this class with you, and a lot of the exercises I just couldn't do because I wasn't able to. The ones where I couldn't
Mm.
do that and keep my back straight, and there was so much I couldn't do. So, oh,
What I would say is that you don't need to do it with your back straight. Like a lot of the yoga postures are designed, when they were designed, people weren't sitting. So
mm,
people weren't spending a lot of their time sitting. So the traditional yoga postures, a lot of them have the assumption that you have a much bigger range of mobility in your hips and shoulders than a lot of people actually do,
mm,
because we spend so much time sitting on chairs. We
mm,
spend so much time driving vehicles, and um, so I would always start from where you are. Like if you need to sit on a chair to do it, it will start to
to build,
it
yeah.
will start to build. And I think that people have this idea that in order to be able to do yoga, you need to sit with your back straight and you need to be but actually that's just not the reality of most people. And that's one of the reasons why I created yoga for tired people as well, because I
Mhm,
just want because I think the sometimes when you go to a yoga studio, it's a self-selecting group, because by the time you're in a yoga studio, you've already got people who have decided that yoga's for them. So they're already the people who
mhm,
can sit on the floor. They're already the people who can get up and down from the floor. They're already the people who can sit
yeah.
straight. So it's like, how? but actually everybody can benefit from yoga. It might just not look how you imagine that yoga should look.
So what does yoga do for you? Like when you say everyone should benefit from it, how does it benefit us?
So that's a really good question. I think that it benefits different people in different ways, which is a bit of a cop out answer, I understand.
Mm.
But actually, it's for me and for the people that I teach and what I hear is that it allows you space to come back to yourself, because I think in the society that we have, we're just literally running from one thing to another all of the time. And a lot of people are really um, scared to sit with themselves. It's almost like any kind of the feeling or thoughts, or the thought of being on your own without
Mm.
any other things like is scary to people. So it just allows people that space to be, which I know sounds quite trite, but it makes a huge difference in that people can then, like I was saying earlier, people can respond to what's going on rather than just imagining what's going on, or not never quite looking at the things that they might need in their lives. Does that make sense, Annie? I feel like that's a bit of
Yeah,
a
no, I think it does. So it's like it's interesting that you don't mention the physical there. It's all a
Mm.
psychological. It's all what it does for your head, basically.
So the physical is like moving your
Is the
body.
physical like a byproduct? It's that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay,
So
right.
the physical asanas are there as a tool for you to learn about yourself. So the
To breathe?
challenge
Is it all about breathing? Like getting
so
the
th
air through you?
there is the breathing element as well, but the breath and the asana are there as a tool to learn how to be present in the moment. So the
Yeah,
challenge and the reason why we have challenge in asana and yoga is not because if you can stand on your head, then you're a more spiritual person. It's when you learn how to do challenging things, you confront things about yourself that you can then learn and go through. And for some people, that might be standing on their head, and for some people, that might be just learning how to stand up straight, or it
mm,
might be learning how to stand on one leg.
mm.
It's so it's not about the end result, it's about how you build the learning something
And how
and
you feel in the moment of doing
yeah,
it. Right.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So when you left drama school and you made this commitment to yoga, you said, I've just done 4 years of that. I don't
Mhm,
want to, I'm not going to pursue drama. It's
mhm.
a big old decision having spent 4 years of your life, concentrating on that. And you decided to commit to yoga. What happened next? And tell me about your teaching and I suppose the learnings of like what you learned upon yoga and upon uh, coming across people learning yoga, like what you learned from teaching people yoga, basically.
Yeah, so when I got really into yoga, I was really into the physical, like, I was really into Ashtanga, I was really into Iyengar, I was really into, like, you know, the hardcore yoga
Mhm,
because I was young and that's what
mhm.
young people like, and then as I so I live in Newcastle. I've been teaching in Newcastle for like 13 years. And for me, it's really important that I'm teaching people who like I'm teaching my neighbors and I'm teaching my friends and I'm teaching like the people in my life. And what I was finding is that the more physical, the faster, the more physical stuff was just completely inaccessible to most people.
Yeah,
So, and then I also taught pregnancy yoga for a really long time. So I did pregnancy and mum and baby massage for about 11 years. I taught that. And what I was seeing with that was that when people were having children, the um, the ability to, you know, the traditional let's get on our mat for 90 minutes
mm.
and spend 90 minutes away from in silence was just completely not
Yeah, it's not
the
feasible.
it's
Yeah.
just not feasible at all. And then what was happening is people were there was like this feedback loop where they weren't doing it and then they were feeling bad and then they were feeling bad because they were supposed to be doing it and they weren't doing the thing that was making them feel better, and then they were almost like feeling guilty
Oh God.
because
Yeah, of
like
course.
they're
Yeah.
like, because if only I just did my yoga I would feel better, and
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it just wasn't. And so I was like, right, well, how can I make it more accessible? Like, what can I do
yeah,
to make it so that like people can actually do it? And so that's where the idea of like keeping the core elements, but like making it much shorter and
yeah,
saying like, this is so we're going to weave it into the day rather than being like, let's have 90 minutes away from the
yeah,
family and we'll just do what we can when we can.
yeah. And how did you find people responded to that?
I've found that people really, the people who speak to me about it say that they really like it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've had to do a bit of education around like, because I think that people are like, oh, that's not proper yoga. Like, that's
Mm,
not how you, it doesn't feel like I'm doing something proper. But I think this assumption that in order for something to be proper, then it has to be hard is
mm.
a really strange mirror of the society that we live in, where we really value like
It's also, and
fit.
it feels quite anti-yoga conceptually as well, right?
Mhm.
Because that
In
yoga,
what?
like in terms of saying that it has to be hard to be successful,
Yes.
like everything you just told me about the kind of what yoga does for you, it should be about how it feels as opposed to, yeah, like
Yeah.
it's relative, right, to how it
Yeah.
feels for whoever's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, it's like it's amazing to have all of these like perfect ideas of yourself doing it, but if you never actually get your mat out and do it, then
What's the
it's
point?
kind of what's it's irrelevant. So it's like, how can we break it down and make it so that people actually do it?
Yeah. So you said at the beginning about like how for you it brought you back to your body, it brought you into
Mhm.
your body, and I don't even know what the question is here, but I guess this is the bit that feels like a puzzle to me, which is your mind and your body and how they're connected, and
Mhm.
how it feels to me like yoga is that's what yoga is about. It's about the connection between the mind and the body, but I don't understand how it is about that. But the fact that you can do all of this physical stuff in a moment, like very, varying ranges of kind of intensity, and you can do your breathing and your mind can feel cleared out and
Mhm.
stilled in the way that yoga does. Do you know anything about the science of that? Like how does it work, Joe?
So what we're doing with yoga is that we're balancing the nervous system basically. So
Okay.
um, the parasympathetic nervous system is this. You'll have, the rest and digest and the flight or fight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so
What I don't know about rest and digest. I've never heard of that. I've heard of fight or
so
flight.
so rest and digest is the opposite state of it.
Right.
So basically, in order for humans to survive, we have two types of problems. We have the immediate problem. Oh, there's the it's always a tiger in the bush. I don't know why people are
Yeah,
obsessed with there being a tiger in the bush, but there's a tiger in the bush. We've got to run away from a tiger. But then we have another set of problems, which is that we are like quite odd little creatures, aren't we? We're like bald when we can't run very fast. We haven't got claws. We haven't got very sharp teeth. And what the way that we um, develop as the way that we get to be top of the food chain and the way that we get to survive is by cooperation.
mm,
So we need basically two sets of ways of being. So we
yeah,
need the flight or fight with the adrenaline, but we also need this very cooperative. So the danger's gone, but we need to do things like digest our food. We need to heal our bodies. We need
yeah,
to make new humans. We need to
yeah,
think. We need to get on with our family and our neighbours. So the rest and digest state is that. So
yes.
that should be the state that we're in most of the time. But because of the modern world, it's not. We're usually in the flight
Mm,
or fight because life's stressful.
yeah,
And so what the two states of the nervous system are connected by the breath. So when we breathe in, that's the sympathetic nervous system. When we breathe out, that's the parasympathetic nervous system. So we can't control our nervous system consciously. but we can control our breath consciously. So
Hang
when
on, this is blowing my mind. So when you blow in, it's the sympathetic nervous system. Which
yeah,
one's that? Is that rest or digest or fight or flight?
that's the right flight. So do you know, like if you're that's why you if you're panicky,
You breathe in.
yeah, you like breathe in lots of oxygen, and when you're relaxed and you're sleeping, you breathe out. So if you have a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or something, you can watch your heart rate goes up as you breathe in, your heart rate goes out as you breathe out.
Wow.
So your out breath is
Mind,
the
watch your mind blowing like my mind is blowing.
so
That's
that's the
insane.
would you know when people are when we do breath work and when people tell you to do like long, slow
Yeah,
exhalations,
yeah,
that's because it's calming the nervous system
yeah,
down. And we need the sympathetic nervous system. It's not like where we need we need the flight or fight state. It's just having and sometimes like in the Yoga Sutras, it's yoga is explained as like the ability to move around consciousness. And the way that I understand that is like we literally have different states of consciousness when we're asleep, when we're awake, when
yeah,
we're like, there's human
yeah.
beings have different like conscious abilities, and we can, yoga is the ability to um, move yourself around those. That's what we're doing. It's like an exploration of human. I don't talk about this one as much because it's a bit hippy dippy, but
I love it.
it's the
I love
yeah,
it.
I love it too. I love it too.
So you were saying so the breathing is
Mhm.
the interlinking of those two nervous systems, and carry on because you were saying that. So keep talking.
So when we move in time with the breath, so all of these things are things that you will do naturally. You will naturally sway. So have you ever been in a room with babies and mums,
Yeah,
and within a second, everyone starts swaying?
yeah,
Everyone's swaying.
yeah,
You know, when you're tired, you like you rub your ears, and you put your hand on your head and you
yeah.
rub yourself, and all of these things we do unconsciously. Yoga's just naming those things so we know how to do it. So like sway. So if you're feeling stressed, you might do a bit of um chanting, you might do a bit of swaying, but what you're doing is tapping into something that you already know how to do. You just kind of naming what it is that it's doing.
And
Does
doing it
that
intentionally.
doing it
Yeah,
intentionally? Yeah.
yeah, and because by doing it, you are going to achieve what you need to achieve, which is normally
Mm.
a sense of calm or
Yeah.
groundedness or awareness of your body.
And that's what I think people need in this society. So what I spend a lot of my time doing is getting people into that sense of calm, getting that sense of safety,
Mm,
because of the society that we live in. That is just what people need, because we need to be there before we can start doing anything else with it. You can't, like, most people need that sense of safety and grounding, but that isn't the only thing that yoga is. But it's in the general public, that's what most people need.
yeah. And have you found since you've been teaching yoga, you say you've been teaching it for what, 13 years or something like that now? Have you found that your experience of the people that you are teaching, like they are more stressed as time, in terms of what I mean is by the way that we consume technology, by the way that we're
Mm,
always in front of a screen and everything in that time that you've been teaching, everything that we do now, from our
mhm.
banking, our parking, our shopping, our fucking convening, everything is through a screen. Surely that affects our nervous systems on a universal level. Like,
I think so. I think so, 100%. And I think it affects our thoughts as well. I feel like I think it affects our internal landscape of the way we think just massively. I don't. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking back, and I don't know if people are more stressed. I think they are. But I think again, it's a self-selecting group, so it's always been
right.
stressed people in my classes because by the
Yeah.
time you think. But what is lovely now is that even though people are more stressed, I think people have the language to understand that that's not normal, and I think there's a lot more people. I think there's a lot more willingness to learn about these things. I know when I first
Mm,
started teaching, a lot of because I was teaching Newcastle, and like I love Newcastle more than anything in the world, but we are like 15 years behind the rest of the country when it comes to like to any kind of fad or anything. So a lot of my time at the beginning was just telling people what yoga was.
Yeah.
And now I feel like everybody knows what yoga is. uh, And and that's great because it means that we can kind of hit the ground running with the classes.
Do we think that there's a certain demographic that gravitates towards yoga more than others? Like, anytime I've been to a yoga class, it is majority women.
Mhm.
Um, you don't ever see, I mean, in my experience, I'd never seen kind of a lot of men or a diverse range of men in terms of age in a yoga class. You never see young fellas or old fellas. It's just kind of, I don't know. Like, am I right in, or is that just my experience? I don't know.
I think it really depends on the class. So
Okay, that's good.
I've just taught restorative class, and I had 16 in. There was two men who were aged, so there was a 23-year-old man and a 30-year-old man, and then a 70-year-old man, and then a big range of
Amazing.
women.
Yeah,
So I think it depends on the class, but I do think that um, I think yeah, I think it depends on the class, and I think that it has changed a lot over the years. I think more men are starting to do it, because I think that more men have talked about doing it as well. So I think when it first started, it was a bit of a weird thing. It was like
yeah.
weird ladies in leotards did it.
I
Um,
mean, I think it's also, there's a perception, isn't it, of yoga of being kind of very low intensity and kind of not very, like my suspicions at the start, of it not being tiring enough, not being
mm,
challenging enough on a physical level. But then I got proven wrong when I sat down and tried to do your 10-minute shoulder class and couldn't sit with my legs crossed for 10 minutes. I saw this video on Instagram once of men, loads of like proper like gym bunny
mm,
fellas, like hench guys, being forced to do Pilates, like
mhm.
reformer Pilates, and they just couldn't do it because the level of internal strength that you have to do that. Like, you must be so like strong in your body from having done yoga for that many years.
I think I am, but I also do other exercise as well. I don't just
Yeah.
do you. I do other stuff as well. But I've taught yoga to the Newcastle Falcons, and I've taught yoga to lots of men. But I think now there's a real understanding of men needing to do things for their mental health as well. So
Yeah.
I find that my restorative classes, which were much more women, like a lot of men are coming in to do, and I love that. I think it's great. I think the more
Yeah,
people
it's
who do
great.
it, just the better.
When
Like
you say restorative, what is restorative yoga?
so restorative yoga is like really slow, but just because it's slow doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
So I actually think the slower yoga classes are much harder than the faster yoga classes, because in the faster yoga classes, you don't have time to be
Get the
by
Yeah, yeah.
yourself.
Right,
So like
okay.
mentally it's easier to like, and I love both. Like I do both.
So
I
when you
love
say,
both.
like, with the fast ones, if you don't have time to be by yourself, you mean you're too busy doing the
Mhm.
moves? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's too much
So
to think about.
yeah, which is great because it gets you out of like, so it just does
Yeah.
something else with your brain where it's like, because it's that kind of patting your head and doing your tummy at the same time,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
So it's
You
like
don't have
you're
time
like,
to think about anything apart
you
from,
just-
and you are connected to your body, and that your brain and your
Mhm.
body are synergized. But yeah, there's no time apart from just the time that it takes to figure out the movement and to
and
catch
then
up with the movement. Yeah.
and then in restorative, it's much more like slow. And so people, I think a lot of people, I think this is a mistake that yoga teachers sometimes make, is that they say that the slower classes are for beginners. So they think that just because it's a slow class, it's a beginner's class. And
Right.
actually, I don't think that just because something's slow doesn't mean that it's suitable for beginners. I think that sometimes the slower sessions are even harder than the faster sessions.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, when you say harder, my mind automatically goes to like a sense of physical challenge, but it's actually mental,
Yeah.
and it's yeah, it's, I think I've been looking at it the entire wrong way. like when I came in here to start and was saying, I've never done yoga because it doesn't feel physical enough for me, and I want to really like be so tired. But it's not about that. It's about what's in there.
Absolutely, and I think loads of people I think this is one of our jobs as yoga teachers is to really educate people on this, and it's one of the reasons is because that the physical one of the reasons why yoga has got so popular, and I
Mm.
think it's been great that it's got so popular, is that it looks really impressive when people do handstands, and when we have a visual medium such as Instagram, like, then
You got Dua Lipa on her doing her handstands in her yoga
Mhm.
gear, and yeah.
So how can a member of the general public, unless we educate them as yoga practitioners, how can we expect them to understand that it's anything other than the physical if all that they see is the physical? So,
Yeah.
and but that mental side is so like, if I just show a picture of myself meditating, like, it's not very interesting. It's like no nobody's interested. So it's like, how do you get that? It's just not as
How do you
sexy,
get
is
it
it?
across? Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you meditate as well as doing yoga? And would you advise for both of those? I mean, we'll get to the practical set of the questions now. So if anyone who's locked in has any questions for Joe, have a think, and we'll do some questions now. But let me start off with that then. Like the meditation and the yoga, are they separate things to you?
So they can be separate, but the kind of yoga that I teach and the kind of yoga that I do myself is from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and so I practice all 8 limbs of yoga, and one of the limbs of yoga is meditation. So the style of yoga that I teach and the style of yoga that I practice myself,
Yeah.
meditation is so in the 8 limbs of yoga. The limbs are like it's like a tree, so they're like branches of a tree, and the reason why they're called limbs is because one's not more important than the other.
Yeah.
And asana, which is the physical postures, is one of the limbs,
Oh
and then
wow.
so that's only
You would
one, and
think that
this,
would be the whole trunk.
but
This is
that's
fascinating.
so that's just one of the limbs, and then you have your pranayama, which is your breathing exercises. You
Mm.
have your yamas and your niyamas. These are the way that you interact with the world. So they're your restraints and your observances. So these are like non-harm, non-stealing, like
Wow.
cleanliness. Like there's like a way of being in the world, and
Wow, I had
then
no idea. So there's like a whole ethical like
yeah,
values side to it. Wow.
and then there's your meditation, contemplation, withdrawal of the senses, and finally samadhi, which is contentment. So that's the 8 limbs. So it's a full philosophical system for you to live your life. And this is why I think it's really important that we take it off the mat,
Yeah.
and not just do it. Like, this is why I think it's actually a really great thing to be able to do weaving alongside your life rather than it being like it's just something that you do on a mat and then you get off your mat
Mm.
and it's done.
Yeah, because the more you talk about it, the more like it's so much more than just a mat under your arm. Yeah. Fascinating. Joe, I have some questions that came from some of my subscribers, and this was just around when I originally launched Movement Month and asked
Mm,
people what they might want to hear from, and I thought these questions could apply to you.
yeah.
So we'll start with those. This is from, I didn't get her name, but she said, please can you cover movement and exercise for women over 60? I attend a yoga class once a week, walk my dog for about an hour a day, hilly, cold water short swim in sea 3 to 4 times a week, and I'm learning Cornish rowing and row about once a week. This woman's well
Yeah, she's
active.
doing loads.
She says, however, in the last year or so, I have so many aches and pains in joints
Mm.
and muscles, and I've no idea if this is just the aging process and if I should do more or less exercise or movement. So I guess it's just for that specific demographic of people over 60. I mean, that feels like this person is incredibly active, but is there things that you have seen and learned about that would help this age group?
So all through your life, you have the ability to build muscle, you have the ability to build strength, you have the ability to build mobility. I think that there's this myth that as we get older, and we do lose muscle mass as we get older, but we also have the ability to gain muscle mass, and we have the
So your
ability to.
ability never changes.
So your ability, as you get older, your ability changes, but you also have the ability to get stronger or less strong depending on your body is still adaptable as you get older to what you do.
I see. I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So obviously it's harder. Like when you're in your 60s, I'm not saying that it's not harder when you're in
Yeah.
your 60s than when you're in your 20s. Like
Yeah.
that would just be untrue. But it doesn't have to be that we have to like stop doing stuff completely. And throughout your life, the more that you do, the more strength you're going to have and the more ability that you're going to have. So but I think we are adaptable, so and we adapt slowly. So I think what happens a lot is that people think um that they build strength faster than they do. So what happens is people jump into a movement practice
Hmm.
and then like do it 5 times a week, loads, and then they get injured and then they think it was the practice that and actually it just takes as you get older, it probably just takes a little bit longer for your body to adapt. So you just need to maybe, like, if you're going to do couch to 5K, maybe do each of the weeks 3 times rather than
Right.
one
Okay.
time. But you
So
can still,
still, you can still have the same ambitions, but it's just about taking, maybe going a bit slower, not in doing it in such an extreme or intense way as you would have done before. How would you explain the muscles and aches and pains in the joints and muscles? I
well,
mean,
you do get more aches and pains as you get older. But what I would say is that it's like
I
I
guess she's
wouldn't.
asking, should she listen to those and do less, or how should she treat herself as a result of those aches and pains in joints and muscles?
Well, it's all I wouldn't want to give advice to someone
Yeah,
on
fair.
so I would say, like, if they're new aches and pains and, like, go to your doctor, but people do get aches and pains from exercise, so it's
Yeah.
but as a general rule of thumb, like, you can still stay active when you're older.
Yeah. The next one is quite similar. She said, I've just turned 60. I'm finding joint issues a new
Mm.
problem. I keep starting new programs with vigor and then have to wait it out while my knee or my shoulder recovers. I've been strength training on and off for 10 years and even have a trophy. Go on, girl. Jeanette
Ooh.
Phillips, go on, you. But everything definitely now has a physical price attached, and it's difficult
Mm,
to know what to work through and what to avoid. Yeah, really similar
really
question.
similar.
And I think both of those women are doing very intensive exercise, the rowing, the hiking up hills, the weight training. And I read that as someone who also enjoys intensive exercise, love weight training, love anything that's kind of high intensity. And I really would like to do that for as long as possible too. And I wonder how long, I mean, I guess everyone's different, aren't they, in how they're made and what they can do. But I'd love to still be lifting weights in my 60s.
Oh, I'd love to still be lifting weights in my 60s. I think but the more that you do and the more that and recovery as well. I think recovery is so important.
Mm,
Having that ability to like, because I think when you have that quite intensive, because I love intensive exercise as well. Like I love
yeah,
that. I think it gives you something different. Like I love a spin class. I love lifting heavy stuff and then putting it back down again. Like it
yeah,
gives you that like
yeah,
buzz,
yeah.
but you need to be able to regulate yourself without that buzz as well, because otherwise what happens is, like, if you can't on the when you're injured, if you have no other way to regulate yourself other than that, then that's when you push through injuries, and that's when you like attach your self-worth to your achievements. And so it's definitely happened to me in the
Mhm.
past where I've gone, "Oh, I can't go to the gym," and then you spiral, and
Yeah.
it's like the thing that holds your mental health together is being able to go to the gym. And
Mm.
so that's where something like yoga really comes in, because it's like, but you can also it's a way to regulate yourself without having to attach your self-worth to something that's external.
Yeah, and it's still movement, and it's still
Oh
exercise.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still like, if you do it properly, you could be shaking and sweating and, especially some of that, the more high intensity stuff you were talking about. Okay. Sarah, mobility. I love this. She says, I'd love to know what basic first thing in the morning routine might look like to help the body. brackets. I'm shriveling up like a crisp packet here. So this is a blatant cry for help. Can I just say I really enjoy that analogy of a body shriveling up like a like a crisp packet. Um, and it does feel like what she's describing is could be helped by yoga and the practice of yoga and stretching.
Absolutely, yeah. So a morning stretch, like having a morning stretch is as integral to me as like brushing my teeth. I feel rotten if I haven't. Um, and I would say if you're going to do stretch, then try and attach it to something that you already do. So instead of thinking, right, I need to put like a 20-minute stretch into my routine, think, okay, as soon as I put my feet on the floor, I'm going to have like a really easy, like 5-minute thing. So even like just bringing your arms up over your head and like stretching, because I find that movement
Yeah.
is kind of like, it's like a snowball effect, isn't it? So if you start moving early on, you're actually going to you'll move more throughout your day.
Mm.
Whereas if you wake up and you just, I know on the days when I wake up and I scuttle to my sofa and I just have a cup of coffee and then I don't move, then I don't move for the rest of the day.
Yeah,
So it's
it's so annoying. And then I always get so mad with myself if I don't do it first thing because then my body is screaming at me to move. I get all antsy in my thighs, in my
Mhm.
muscles. It's like, oh, they need to move. And
And
yeah.
if you and just make it as easy for yourself as possible. Like
Mm. Mm.
it doesn't need to be a massive, because I think that's something that people do, is that they think that it needs to be big and then it never happens.
Yeah, like I
Or
need to get my gym gear on and go to this special place and do this and yeah, I always found when I've been really busy, like the best sort of way to exercise or to stay mobile is to do what I used to call productive exercise. So it's basically exercise like just cycling instead of getting
yeah,
public
that's a good
transport
idea.
because you're still going to where you need to
Mhm.
go, but you're exercising in the process or just walking. Just like
Yeah.
take the extra time to walk. Like I interviewed David Nichols, the writer, on Monday, on my changes, and he's the guy who wrote One Day, and his latest book is all about walking. It's about a love story about two people walking
I've
across the
read it.
coast
It's
to walk.
it's a great book.
Oh, so good.
Lovely.
But he was saying that he lives in London, and you get an impression in London because there's so many different ways to travel that you should take public transport everywhere because you can essentially, you can take two trains and a bus and get wherever you want in London. But London's so much smaller than you think
Mm,
in terms of walking. So he says he just tries to walk everywhere, and that was really inspiring to me because it's I would always just think to just jump on a tube, and the idea that you could walk somewhere in 45 minutes, and that could be your
mm.
exercise for the day as opposed to squeezing on a tube.
Yeah.
So
And
it's kind of like how can you fit it into what you're already doing is a
I
really
think
good
as
point.
well with that, I was someone said to me recently, probably about a year ago, about how the brain really needs like waiting time, and that's something that we don't have anymore. Is that we don't have any, like, if you remember 25 years ago, we would sit on a bus and not have anything to look at. So, and
Yeah.
we just don't have that. So I've really tried, because I walk everywhere, and I've tried to like not listen to a podcast or not listen, and so just let my brain, because it's a really
Oh
important
God, Joe, I don't know if I
bullseye.
could do that. That's really brave. That's really
It's
brave. I totally get you. I just don't think I honestly, and this is terrifying to me. I don't know what I would do with myself for 45 minutes with nothing to occupy my mind.
this is
No
what
music, as in no music or no, like I don't know what I'd do.
Well, this is why I started. One of the reasons why I got into meditation was the realization that I couldn't go for a wee without some kind of
Okay,
stimulation.
balance of things.
So
Yeah.
I would like, if I was on the toilet, I would like read the back of a shampoo bottle,
Oh,
because
always, always.
because the thought of and I was like, no, this can't I can't
Yeah.
do that. Like this, I have to do something. And it's interesting as well, because the brain's a little bit like a car. So if you're in fifth gear, the brain will go, but it takes some time for it to go down to first gear. But once you're in first gear, the brain like is and no matter what like, obviously people have more active brains than other people, but even within that, everybody's brain will have like a scope where it's like
Yeah.
where their fast bit and their slow bit is. So yeah, I find that I have to do that. Otherwise my brain is just like, I cannot live in my own brain unless I do it, because just wants to jump out of my head.
I'm exactly the same, and it's ironic because I'm a writer, and I should be really preserving any time I have just in my brain to 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 sit in it, as you say, and to allow ideas to come and go. And that's the most important part of writing and ideas and inspiration is that it's just having an empty brain to allow your mind to kind of turn things over and ponder stuff.
And
Um,
walking's the best time to do that because it's bilateral movement.
yeah,
So because you're using different sides of the brain as you move, so that's like it puts your brain into a different state. So
yeah,
that if you're wanting creative, if you're wanting a creative state in your brain, go for a walk and don't and that will be when your brain will
and leave your
call
phone
up.
at home and risk getting lost
Oh, I wouldn't go
and
that far,
finding your
Annie.
but you know what I mean? But there's so much justification for having your phone now. You're like, God, well, what if I get lost?
Mm,
Oh my God, I need my maps. Or, what
mhm.
there's so many reasons for why you might need your phone that it's just like I think it's good to remember that you can, there's things such as street signs. I'm talking to myself here mainly.
Yeah,
There's a really good question here from Lorraine Nivron. Hello, Lorraine. I've tried yoga twice. I couldn't still my mind. Any advice, Joe?
this is such a common
Must be so common,
question.
right?
It's
Yeah.
such a common question. Um, And the answer is a bit annoying because the answer is it's not about trying to steal your mind. So I think this is one of the blocks that people have is that the more that you try and still your mind, the more irritated you're going to get. Um,
Yeah.
and it's actually about accepting how your brain is in that moment.
Yeah.
So we basically have two ways of thinking. So if you close your eyes and you say the word hello to yourself in your head, you are saying the word hello, but you're also hearing the word hello.
Yeah.
So there's the part of your brain that says the word hello, there's the part of your brain that like makes the thoughts, but then there's the part of your brain that hears your thoughts. So there's the part of your brain that's like watching your thoughts. So with yoga, we're not trying to stop the thoughts. We're trying to sit in that part of the brain that watches the thoughts. And we
Mm.
think that it's like watching like watch,
Yeah.
watch, 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 watch. But actually it's just letting it be like we all have this like innate need to control everything all of the time.
God, yes.
And it's that like for this 30 seconds, I'm not going to control anything. I'm just going to allow, and that might be frustration, it might be anger, it might be grief, it might be, but it's very containable because it's only for this 30 seconds. And then, and that's what it is. It's not about, I think people think that they're sitting there and you're like Zen. Like quite a lot of my,
Like
I
you
would,
can feel like you might like just like turn a light switch off and suddenly you're just like black still. It's not the case,
that's
is it?
never happened. Like I would love to like be able to like project what happens when I meditate. And it's like most of it is just me driving myself crackers with my own brain. But it's like, but
That
most
makes
of
me
it,
feel so much better.
but it is like my brain. But when you're not aware of it, you have such a strong attachment to your thoughts. So when I
Mm.
don't meditate, I think that what I think is true and real and important. And actually, when I sit and watch my thoughts, I'm like, one, I don't agree with 90% of what I think. And
Oh my God.
the other 10% is just like literally random crap that it's like, oh, and who was that actor in Saved by the Bell? And who was it? But like when you're not when you just live in your life, you're like being pulled by your thoughts. So for every thought, you're like, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do
Yeah,
this. And it's just having that
so
space to
deep.
be like, no, like so that when you come out of meditation, instead of being like, I've got to go, you're like, that's a thought. It's not that important. And then you're kind of in control of your life again rather than being pulled around by you.
Oh, that sounds like heaven. Like my life at the moment, I think I'm definitely it's perimenopause as well, but I
Mm,
feel so like in my brain, everything is so convoluted and I can't keep anything still for long enough to deal with it. So what happens is things come in, I miss them, I forget them, and it feels like everything's falling through the cracks. And then I'm in this constant state of panic because I remember what I haven't done. Um,
mm,
And then I'm like, oh God, I have to do that now. And then in the process of remembering that, I've remembered something else that I haven't done. And it's just this wild goose chase of me chasing after my own fucking misdemeanors and things that I've messed up and forgotten. And it's exhausting.
It's absolutely exhausting, and also your brain, because it's stuff that's quite often our anxieties are stuff that we have no control over in that exact moment. So sometimes it's existential stuff, but sometimes it's stuff that we can't do until next Tuesday.
Well, for me,
So
it's like 3 a.m. in the morning, remembering an email that I didn't reply to, and that has been sitting in my inbox for 2 months, unreplied to.
but your brain's you're doing that as a form of control because your brain's like, this is like listing things, and
Yeah,
it's like a way for your brain to be like, we're doing something about all of the stuff, but it's not productive at all. It's just,
yeah,
but the more you do it, the more you get. So it's like, but it feels really compulsive because you do it and it kind of gives you a slight sense of relief in that moment. So it almost becomes addictive, that kind of thinking, because you're like, I'm listing all the emails that I haven't replied to, so that feels like I'm doing something productive. So
yeah,
I get a sense of relief, but it wasn't productive because the thing is still there. So your brain will go back to it and do it again.
yeah,
Is
over and
that
over again.
over and
And
over
so,
again?
so, so if you meditate, what you're able to do. So, let's say I was an avid meditator and this
Mhm.
happened. What would my brain be able to do that it isn't able to do? If you know what I mean. How would it help me in that scenario of lying in bed, remembering all my bloody emails?
You
How?
would you would have a compassion for yourself, so you'd be able to say, okay, I'm lying in bed and I'm thinking of these emails, and I'm not that doesn't make me a bad person, and I'm not going to, like, you would be able to have the compassion for the fact that your brain was doing that, so you'd be able to say, this is the normal thing that my brain's doing. And
Yeah.
then you would be able to say, and it's only a thought.
Mm.
So you would find it easier, but not always. Like, just because you meditate doesn't mean that you don't drive yourself mad at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just that you have a bit more of a, um
It feels like
it's
there's a
not
kind of
control.
a sense of removal, like you're able to remove
Yeah.
yourself from you're not defined, but you are not the thought. You are not the
Yeah,
thought. You can see the thought from a distance and see it for what it is. Yeah.
exactly. So you're able to, like, yeah, exactly that. Because thoughts are
Mm.
just energy. Thoughts are just, but we put so much, and same with feelings. Like, we think that feelings are good or feelings are bad, or feelings are like, thoughts are good or thoughts are bad, but they're just a thing that exists in the moment, and they're not, there's no morality attached to them, because how much do we, like, when you, sorry, my stand is doing something very strange. Um like, when you have a thought or a feeling, you think, I shouldn't have that feeling, I shouldn't have that thought, that makes me a bad person, that makes
Mm.
me a, and actually it doesn't make you a bad person, it just makes you a human with a thought. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. I'm just going to take this out of the holder and I'm just going to hold it like a selfie stick.
Yeah.
um the um I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding, because in the wellness world, we have put a lot of stuff around, like, manifestation, and this idea that your thoughts become reality. So I think sometimes people are a little bit frightened if they have bad thoughts, that they're manifesting bad things.
Wow.
And actually that's not how that works. And I think especially when people have, um I think it's, as I saw this loads in working with new mams, because one of the things that our brain does is, um things like intrusive thoughts, that's a way
Yeah.
for our brain to protect us. So quite often our intrusive thoughts are thoughts that are like the most repugnant thing that we can think of to
Yeah.
do, to remind us not to do that thing. So, like,
Yeah.
it's a thinking, oh, I'm going to throw myself off onto the train line, that's to remind you that there's the danger of the train line, so to step back. So it's like your
Mm.
brain's, because you were not going to pay any attention to it if it just says step back from the train line, but if it
Yeah.
gives you a, it's like a way for your brain to protect you. But then people think that your thoughts are going to make something real, or that you believe your thoughts, or
Mhm.
your
Yeah.
thoughts and actually it's just a thought.
I mean, it's like that knowledge, that awareness that you have this deeper level of consciousness, like like you have a way to extract yourself from the thoughts that you have, and to not be defined by them is so huge. It should be on bloody billboards all over the
Mm.
world. Like and, like, I know I'm being profoundly ignorant, and there's probably loads of people watching this right now who'll be like, "Duh, yoga, that's what it all is." But I think so many people don't know that, and it's a shame that it's not, like, taught in schools at the same time as,
Yeah,
like, home ec or something. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels so important for people to know that and to be able to practice that, in their daily life.
I think it is because I think it makes being human so much more bearable. Because being human's really hard, and having a human brain is really, really hard. And the last thing we need is to make it harder by thinking that by feeling guilty or shame around the way
Yeah,
that human brains work.
yeah.
Um, and I used to think, like, I remember,
Also,
I
it makes you feel like you have no capacity to change.
yeah,
And that feels like the key, because change, like you need to be able to know, or to believe that you have the capacity to change is hope. It's basically hope. It's optimism. It's all of those things are all rooted in that concept of not being defined by your thoughts.
yeah, and not being defined by your skills, and yeah, we have this ability to to evolve, and that's another thing as well that yoga is about, is like that. I think in the our understanding of ourselves, even if you're not a Christian, we've been brought up in a Christian culture which has this idea of the never changing self. So you're born with a soul that is you, and then you die and you have this soul.
Mm.
And there's a lot of talk around like finding yourself, and as if it's like
Yes.
this non-changing, like, thing
Yeah.
inside you that you find like a Russian doll, and then there's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
authentic self, and that's like the complete opposite of the yoga understanding of what the self is, which is this always changing thing that changes in relation to the context in which you find yourself in. So this your self that you're with your family is very different to the self that you're with your university friends, and
Mm.
it's very different, but one more isn't more you than the other. It's
Yes.
just,
Yeah.
and this is, it's just, I find it so freeing to think I can change.
Yeah.
I can, who I am is malleable, and
Yes. Yes.
and actually I only really exist in this moment. This moment is the only moment that exists. Like, that's the crux of yoga, which is that the present is literally the only thing that is here. Like, we have no past, we have no future, we just have this moment. So paying attention to what is here in this moment is how we become present in life, and how we live a life that is joyful.
Mm. Perfect. That's like the most beautiful end to this conversation I could wish for. And I love that we ended on change, because obviously I'm obsessed
Oh
with change. The
yes.
page, my page is called Changes with Annie Macmanus. I'm just so interested in all the different ways that we could change. And I've never really thought about yoga and change together,
Mm.
and how one can facilitate the other. So that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I've
Can
loved
I
it.
ask one question before we go?
Of
If
course.
for those people who are locked in, who have kind of heard this and feel like inspired and want to learn more, obviously everyone follow Joe and subscribe to Joe, because you have Monday morning. You do, like, you put up a class every week, right? Every Monday morning,
Yeah.
if for paid subscribers, and there's loads of stuff for free subscribers too. But if I wanted to buy a book, or like read a book, like one book, is there one that you could recommend that could kind of help me learn about the kind of foundations of yoga and the practices?
Oh, you've put me on the spot there.
Sorry,
Oh, there's so many. There's
there
so
must be
many. Let
there
me
must
just
be
have a look.
millions.
Let me just have a quick.
I love
There's
she's turning
so
people around
many.
to the
And look at.
bookshelf.
Do you know, this isn't actually about yoga, but I think it's such a beautiful place to start. Is Thich Nhat Hanh's Peace in Every Step.
Have you got it there? Can you hold it up for us?
I haven't, because it's by my bed.
Oh, hi, Luke Tempest. He says, "Thanks, Joe and Annie. I need to get meditating." I hear you, Luke. Me too. Okay,
um,
so say that one more time. I'm going to write it down.
so it's Thich Nhat Hanh. So it's
Yeah,
Thich Nhat, Nhat,
yeah.
Thich Nhat Hanh. and then I think it's NHAN, but I-
NHAN. Okay.
and then it's pieces every step.
Pieces every step.
Yeah,
Okay. Cool. I'm going to get that. That's beautiful. And I'm going to try and meditate.
do
You've
it.
sold it to me, Joe. You've
Well,
really sold it to me.
Annie, I'm doing a in March, I'm doing a 7-day meditation live thing. So I'm going live every day for 7 days in March
Wow.
to teach people how to meditate. So if you
That's so
wanted,
cool. I would love
so
to.
yeah, so do that. So
That can be my introduction.
yeah, and it's because I think everybody. Oh, my husband's just slid that to his.
Oh, you did it. Thanks, husband. Thank you. Okay, that's what it looks like. Deadly. Okay. Peace. Right. Peace every step. Okay. Pieces every step. Got it. Thank you.
So come and learn to meditate with me, Annie. Well,
Okay. It's a deal. It's a date.
love it.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you to everyone who locked in. There's loads of you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you being here. Have a good evening.
You too, Annie. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye now. Bye bye.